You're listening to the Love Your Neighbor podcast.
Well, good morning, and thank you for joining us. If it's morning, evening, whatever time it is, thanks for joining us. We're back with Season 5 of the L.Y.N.X podcast, and this season is brought to us by Brandon Wellness. If you haven't heard about Brandon Wellness, I'm going to encourage you to go to our website, brandonwellness.com, and you can learn about all the things that we're doing to build and invest in the health and wellness of our community. And today, we have a very special guest, a very well guest, I might say. Mike, you're looking exceptionally healthy and well today.
I feel healthy and well.
How do you do it, man? How do you keep it? How do you keep so healthy and well? I mean, there's people listening and they just want to know, how do you do it?
Golf and fish. That's pretty much it.
Golf and fish.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Well, yeah, it's tough, but someone has to do it.
You have to feed the family, right?
Yeah, feed the family. And now my grandson is getting into the fishing, so he just wants to fish all the time. So he and I fish a lot,
So you go, do you go to the river, Chamberlain? Where do you go fishing?
Well, we have a couple choices. One is that we can fish right on our property because we have a pond on our property. At the end of our property is the Split Rock Creek, if that's what it's called.
Yeah.
And you can catch big fish in there, and then we go down to the park and fish there as well. So, and then the biggest one is at the golf course because you can catch tons of fish there, and we just throw them back. But they give up a pretty good fight, so it's a lot of fun. So my grandson really just wants to do it all the time.
So and I'm not a fisherman, so it helped me. What kind of fish are you catching in Split Rock Creek? Are you catching paddlefish?
We can catch catfish, and bluegill, and sunfish, stuff like that. So, and the big fish are in the river. So we get some rather huge catfish there, but a lot of those fish we just put in our pond so the kids can come over and catch them in our pond. So, yeah, so it makes it great.
So you mentioned grandkids. So that now is that your full-time gig, or do you got something else?
Well, I seem to have gotten into this Brandon Wellness thing.
It's interesting. I want those that don't know you, Mike, and there are probably some that don't know you, but you're fairly new to the community. Tell us a little bit how you got to Brandon.
Sure.
And then we'll love to talk about kind of Brandon Wellness and where that's going. So.
Yeah. Well, we grew up in Colorado Springs. Basically built a home to die there because we're old. And my son had 3 children, and my wife said, "Well, we're moving." So that's how we ended up getting here. And we were trying to decide, because we were driving back and forth to see the grandkids. And then it was like, well, we should just buy a place. But we had to have certain parameters. So we needed to have a golf course, needed to have a place where I could fish, and a porch that overlooked a pond. So we went to this house. That's exactly what this one had. And my wife said, this is it. So it was pretty crazy. And then we're extremely religious, and so we were praying on our way out here when we were looking at homes, give us a sign. So she just said, this is the house when she sat in the porch, and we said, well, you need to go inside. So we went inside, and she looked, and the first thing she saw was a picture of Jesus knocking on the door, And then we went through a few closets, and we saw pastoral robes, so these people were priests.
Okay.
And then we went downstairs, and I called her down. I said, "Hey, look at this!" And the 2 people that were selling the house had a picture with them and the Pope. And we thought this is probably a pretty good sign that we should do this.
You had the threefold witness there of the robes,
exactly,
the knocking Jesus, and then the Pope.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And but we have 5 acres, and we've never done anything at all on property. We didn't know what a propane tank was or any of that kind of stuff. My neighbor had to explain that to me, and really had no idea. But we just love it, and the difference of a small town in comparison to where we were. If I have a problem, I call up for help, and they come right over instead of waiting 3 or 4 weeks like in Colorado and stuff like that. So it's pretty nice to have that kind of satisfaction where they come over right away and stuff, and all the neighbors are great. And, so overall, it's just a very relaxing situation, and we enjoy it. And we're 10 minutes from the grandkids, so we can still get away. but we're close enough to take care of them. And I feel like I'm kind of a Brandon resident because we spend a lot of time taking care of the kids and picking them up from school or going to soccer or do whatever that grandparents are supposed to do. So, we enjoy it. And of course, I'm a sports guy, so I like the idea of the kids playing sports and all that stuff. So very nice situation.
So living in Colorado Springs, you obviously were probably a Broncos fan. You cheered for the Broncos. No,
absolutely not.
Really? So how did that go? I mean,
I'm a Raider fan.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I grew up in California, so that's when I grew up there, and so that was my team, and it's always been my team. And the exciting part is that my wife is a Bronco fan, which makes it really interesting. So, but we figured, we've been together now over 40 years, and it's pretty much because everything she likes, I hate, and everything I hate, she likes. So it's well-rounded situation.
Wow. So that's the key. So if you're a young person, if you're listening, if you're not married, there's the key. Find somebody who hates everything you love.
Yeah, exactly. And it works perfect. And, so a lot of people said she's just out of options, but, that was, so.
Well, I remember the time my father told me, he said him and his wife, my mother, said she was mad at him, said, I wouldn't marry you if you were the last man left on earth. My dad just calmly replied, I know you wouldn't, honey. You'd get killed in the rush. So I can understand. I'm sure Sherry feels that way quite often.
I can't imagine.
Well, she lets you fish and golf. I mean, it could be worse.
Yeah, and she golfs with me, so it's not like, I do it by myself. She goes with me to golf. She likes to golf. Doesn't like to fish. But she'll try it if the grandkids are over and they need some help. She'll help them. But we have a barn on our property, and we have a little like a schoolhouse in there, so they can go in, and we have a little class that we take them through and that kind of stuff. And they write all over the walls, and they just think that's really cool. We have chickens. Never had chickens before in our life, so that's always a new experience. But they thought it'd be fun to have them, so we have chickens and. So I get fresh eggs, and I figure that, worst case scenario with the economy and everything else, worst case, I got 3 eggs, so I can live each day.
Right.
Now, I'm not sure what my wife would eat, but,
How do those eggs do they keep?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I'm a
sure
fancy city kid, so.
Right. As long as you don't wash the eggs, they'll last a long period of time.
Oh, okay.
So, that's... I've learned all that stuff too. I don't know. I just ask all my neighbors, and they just all tell me what to do because I have no clue. Yeah. So,
well, good. Well, it's been good to get to know you, Mike, and thank you for being here on the podcast. And I know you and I, one thing we do share in common. I can't stand the Raiders, of course, but we do have in common this passion for community and people. And we started talking, maybe not even a year ago, we started talking about this idea of Brandon Wellness and what it could look like to build a wellness center for the community of Brandon, the surrounding communities, because Brandon is more than just, the 005, as I like to call it. There's that surrounding school district and, reach of our community. And we began talking about that, and early on, you took an interest in that. Tell me a little bit about your interest in this idea of a wellness center, community center. You've moved from Southern California to Colorado, now to South Dakota. What do you see as the future or a need for a place like that?
Well, I'm a sports type of person, so I really was always pushing my kids in sports, and I coached them most of the time. And one thing I remember is my dad, who passed away about 20 years ago, said that the one thing that he regrets was that he thought, my job was to work and bring home money for us. And he said, the worst thing I made was not spending enough time with you. So I kind of committed myself at that particular point that I was going to spend more time. And probably if you ask my 2 kids, they'd say, yeah, I spend way too much time with them because I coached both of them. We did soccer every day after school, and it was just on and on. We'd go to tournaments, and, It was just on and on and on. But, they also learn valuable lessons about it and that type of thing. So to me, sports has always been really important. And when we moved here, we noticed that there were a couple months where kids just sat around. And in Colorado, when it got cold, you just went someplace indoor and you kept working out and playing soccer and football, whatever it might be. And so to me, when we were here in the Brandon area, I kept going, well, where's the place that you guys go when it's cold? So I like to say that the Brandon wellness concept is really 5 reasons, and that's November, December, January, February, March, right? The coldest time. And that's when the kids sit around. They're just like, oh, there's just nothing we can do because it's so cold. And yeah, we can get in the car and drive 20 minutes to Sioux Falls, but do we really want to do that with weather and that type of thing? So to me, it just made sense that you need to have some place to go. So with the Brandon Wellness, I just thought that you can end up having an organization or a building where you can go where many things can be accomplished. And so if you had like an indoor facility where you have turf so that people can go there and work out and run around and kick a soccer ball, but have more than that, an area where wellness is important. And so you sit at home and you say, well, what should we do? Well, here you could gather up everybody in the car, drive down there. We'll have a daycare center so you can put your child in daycare. Your kids can go off and play soccer or football or basketball, whatever they want to do. You can go to the weight room, walk around the track or work out, all at the same time, and it's all indoors. And it could be 30 below outside, but you're still doing stuff to make you better, your health and that type of thing. And
you're doing it as a family
together.
As a
family, exactly.
Rubbing shoulders with other families that you may not know or you may get to know.
Sure. Yeah. And that's where the community element comes into it, is that everybody says, wow, this is some place we can go where we meet all these people, and these are your neighbors, Yeah. So to me, that's the excitement level. And additionally to that, my own personal thing is that I look at kids for an opportunity for them to go to school, because my kids were fortunate to get scholarships to play soccer, and that paid for most of their education. Mm-hmm. And I look at an opportunity here where you have kids that for 5 months out of the year, they can't really work out because it's so cold. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're competing somebody from California for a position and they work out every day because they can, because of the weather, I don't think that's a fair deal. So at least this gives people the opportunity, if they're looking to advance their athletic career, that at least they're going to get a better shot because they can work year-round. And if they decide not to, then that's their choice. But again, we give them that opportunity. So this is a situation to where we have a central place where people can go. It's in the park, and
talk to us a little bit about where the potential because you've had a lot of conversations, you've done a lot of research. You've looked at other communities and other facilities. Talk to us about what the city of Brandon is willing to do and invest in this community center. You've talked with the city staff and the park board. And
Sure. Yeah, we've gone through all the basic deal is that they wanted an area where all the associations, whether it's baseball or football or soccer or any of the associations, they can all get together and invest in one building to where they can all do the same thing. So you can have basketball, you can have tennis, you can have pickleball, you can have football, all those things in one central location. And they thought that would be a great idea to get that together. They just couldn't get everybody together and get it going. And so they asked us if we could meet with them, and we did. And they all said, yeah, this would be a great thing to look at. And so we presented that to the city, and they said, this is a great situation. What we're willing to do is to give you a large amount of acreage so that you can build your facility. We'll pay for the paving and all the electricity and every sewer and all that stuff, and then you're responsible for the building. So they've really stepped up from that standpoint because they want this for the community and they understand. And what happens if you start having people staying here instead of going to Sioux Falls? They spend money here, builds revenue. It's a good situation for everybody. So this is a win-win situation for everybody that's involved in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Where specifically, for those people that live in Brandon or the surrounding area, where specifically, do you know yet where specifically this would be built?
Yeah, it'll be built at the end. There's, there's baseball stadium, and then there's going to be another baseball stadium to be built there, and then next to that is the area where we would be.
Okay, so just kind of in Aspen Park towards the south end.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah,
Great.
and you'd be able to see it clearly from Highway 11 and that type of thing. So there'll be some great exposure and that type of thing.
So there'll be, on Ironwood, on the new Ironwood, there'll be some bike access. I mean, anyone off Sioux Boulevard, if you have access to Sioux Boulevard, you could literally ride your bike down Sioux, turn in on Ironwood, and you could be in this place. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and I guess overall too, the city plan is that they're looking at opening some other avenues too, where we could have 3 different entrances into that area. So you wouldn't have to drive all the way through Aspen Park to get to there, but you can come in the back way as well.
Gotcha. Wow, that's exciting to hear.
Yeah,
I really, you think about that. You move to Brandon, and there's a small town element, but people. A lot of us are busy. We're going places. We're maybe going to Sioux Falls for work, for sports events. We all have things going on, and I just think the idea of having a community center where all people are able to work out and be together is such a cool thing. What do you see as a major, what's the one thing that's standing in our way right now? Or is there one? What do you see as a challenge for the folks that are listening?
Well, the biggest challenge obviously is coming up with the money to do this. And so we've actively gone out. We've put together drawings. We've put together design teams. We've done all the things that we need to do. And now we just need the community's help. And so if you go to our website, there's an area where you can tell us what you'd like to see there. There's an area for you to go there to donate, and we need donations. To go out and get a big company somewhere to give us the money to do this, we have to put their name on the facility. And we're just not really in a position where we want to do that because that doesn't show community ownership. All right? That shows somebody just wrote a big check. So we're not saying we wouldn't take that money at some point in time, but we'd like the community to voice what they want, for them to contribute whatever they can. And then we would look at, where we are as far as moving forward on this project. So we may do this in phases. We're still looking at all those different avenues. We have 5 different construction companies that we've talked to that are all willing and able and all work in the area in Sioux Falls. So it's a nice situation. So they're excited about it as well. We just need to get going from that standpoint. So We're putting together the drawings that we need so that we can go out. We'll be able to fundraise. We have a relationship with the Soccer Association, and on their website, you can donate to our facility because it's going to be an indoor turfed area. So soccer can play, football could play. There's a lot of things you can do with nets and everything else, hanging them down and cutting down fields and all that. So this just gives everybody an opportunity. The bottom line of the whole thing is that if you don't want to be sitting around for those 5 months, you have something you can do. And I think once people see that there's ability to go do that they'll just flock to the area and they'll just think it's a great situation. And I don't see anybody that's telling us why it won't work. Right. And so
has it been pretty positive responses? I know you and I have talked. You've talked with people, just people in Brandon. What's been the typical reaction from people that you talk with?
Well, as I mentioned to you before, I mean, my grandkids were at swimming lessons, and I started talking to a couple of people, and they noticed me because I had done a spot on TV, and they said, "Oh, tell us about this wellness center." And I ended up having like 20 people sitting around, and I was telling them about this, and they all thought it was so exciting that they'd have an indoor place to go right here in town. And it's right down the street from most of these places where most people live. So the excitement level has been there. I haven't seen anybody that says, "Well, that just doesn't make any sense," Right. And of course, if everybody might be saying that, but we would like someone to say, "Hey, this is the reason why it won't work," But it's just been very, very positive all the way around. So I'm excited about that standpoint of it, and so that's what I'm looking at. But these construction companies are all eager to get involved and that type of thing. So,
well, Mike, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming in and visiting. Where do we direct somebody that's interested in Brandon Wellness? Just tell us again, how do we get in contact with Brandon Wellness?
Sure. Brandon Wellness, all you do is type in Brandon Wellness in the internet, and it'll bring up our website, and You can donate there. You can read about us. You'll see my statement about the 5 months, you know. And but again, I think that if people really look at it and think about it, there are those 5 months where the kids sit around and say, well, what can we go do? Well, this is something you can do, you know, and it's right down the street. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah, it's a pretty exciting vision. Well, we're going to have you back, Mike.
Okay.
We'll get more updates. We're going to keep asking, getting updates on this because I think it's something that we're all interested in. So thank you for listening. If you've listened this far, we're glad that you listened this far. Go ahead and share this episode on your social media, on Facebook, YouTube. Go ahead and help us promote this message and promote this idea of community wellness and what it could be with your friends. And of course, go to brandonwellness.com. We'd love to see your support. If you can contribute, whether it's $25, $1,000, whatever it might be, we would just love to see you say, hey, yes, I want to support. I'm for Brandon Wellness. Thanks for joining us. And Mike, thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck fishing, man.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Love Your Neighbor podcast. The purpose of the Love Your Neighbor podcast is to build community one conversation at a time. You can help us build that community by sharing the podcast on your social media channels and rating our podcast on whatever platform you're listening from. Another way is to let us know of any neighbors who have a story. Go L.Y.N.X!